Hello and welcome to New Junction. In this episode I'm going to show you how I make plywood platforms. It's quite a simple process. I need one to fill this space here and then here. Obviously they're not straight shapes by any means, there's curves in them. And the simple way I do it is I go piece by piece, put some A4 paper down, draw around it, lightly get the shape, cut it out, trim it to the right size, then that gets stuck down and we move on and on and on and so on. Eventually we'll have a giant template which I will then attach to plywood. In this case it's the remaining plywood from when I extended the baseboards. I've got an 8x30 sheet, so that cut up and then doubled up makes a nice height platform for me. It's all quite simple really. It does require a circular saw and a jigsaw for this method, but and a lot of sanding, but it's easy enough and relatively simple, so let's get on with that. So as you can see, if it zooms in, won't zoom in on white paper. There we go. As you can see, I've stuck down the first bit at one end. It's very important you don't stick too much of the paper down to the actual board because it's got to come up without ripping. Lightly draw with the pencil just in case you lose your way where the cork sheet is, and then with a razor blade go across the buffer edges. Don't forget you can sand this down when it's in plywood form every extra mil. You better to be too big than too small when it comes to the platform. So looking at this sheet, all I do is push it down into the track and you can see it causes a nice pattern on the paper. That's why we use paper, because it's nice and thin. And then just so I know in case I lose my way, that's pushing up against the cork sheet. Ooh, there we go. Just so we've got a rough indication of where the base is. So when we cut it, when it's against the wood, you've got a rough template of where to be. So you want to be, realistically, if I show you this end, you want to be somewhere in between the outside line and that inside line. And then you sort of sand it down to fit. And that's literally the process. And there we are. New Junction Central's platform template is done. Now, I've been around that again and just trimmed it up a little bit. Of course, it's not perfect. The reason I do the pencil lines is when you cut the plywood, you've got to trace around this bit of paper, and of course it's very rough around the edges, so it just gives me a reminder of where the actual cork sheet is, to know or to give me a better idea of where to trace. But like I said, you always cut too wide, and then you sand it down and get it into position when it's on the layout. So the next thing you'll see is this on some plywood, traced out and ready to be cut. Right. What I've done is I've taken the templates we made with the paper, I've laid them onto my spare sheet of plywood. This is 8mm thick. I've done it twice per platform. I don't know if you can quite see that on camera, but I've roughly penciled it in. What I'm going to do now, which is only a temporary measure, is actually lay one on top of the other. The reason I've drawn it in is so you can, when you lay them on, because they're not square, these pieces by any means, as you can see, but I'm going to PVA them together tonight. They're going to dry. It's only temporary, and then when they're dry I'm going to jigsaw round them properly at the right size, and then when they go on the layout itself, they'll be screwed down in position and glued once they're ready. So the next step is to stick some PVA all over this, and then put one on the other and leave it for 24 to 48 hours. So that's next. Now it's a whole day later. The boards, as you can see, are on my attic floor, which is a lovely mess. But just having a look, and now while the pieces of plywood are generally stuck together, what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to be jigsawing around the lines, which will cause a lot of friction, what I'm just doing is going around with a few screws to make sure the whole thing stays together and doesn't move out of alignment during the cutting. So that's what I'm doing now. So there we are. As you can see, I've roughly jigsawed out those pieces of plywood. The screws became absolutely essential because, as you can see, the bits of plywood wanted to split apart with the action of the jigsaw, but with the screws, when the screws are in, holds it together firm. Obviously when it's in position it'll be PVA'd down again and screwed into the baseboard, but until we're ready for that, as you can see, my jigsaw skills are not the best by any means, but then it's not really a precision tool. What we needed to do here, the goal was to cut on the outside of the template line, and then we'll use a sander to smooth that all off and make it so it'll fit the locos. But I think you'll agree it's starting to look really good, and really adds a 3D perspective now. It's just I'm really impressed. It's grown before my very eyes. Right, next job is to sand the edges down. Just before I get on with the sanding, this is the first time you can really see one of my main goals for the station. Now obviously in reality, right at the back there, you've got 3 lines which then go to my fiddle yard, which is obviously to the right hand side. A big issue for me would be to hide all of that when you're looking straight at it. So the reason I have the curved platform is because the scenery will curve off to the left, and as you look straight down the station, you won't be able to see it at all because the scenery will follow it round. And that's exactly what I was going for. So as you can see, top down, the edge of the platform comes just behind where this one is at the widest point. So from a viewing angle, you won't be able to see straight through to see all this track, which is exactly what I was after. So I'm really pleased that that's worked. I know it's winter, but that's not snow. I wanted to show you that if there is a worst part to a wooden platform, it's got to be the mess you create when you finally sand the platforms down to make coaches fit. So the platform can ultimately be as tight as possible to the train, but of course that leaves a lot of mess. Now I'm using a sand detailer sander, which of course nicely polishes the edges down, but of course blows out a lot of sawdust. It's more just to it's just to show you that that is normal. These are working layouts, and of course mess is unavoidable, but I wanted to show you a quick glimpse into the real world of modelling before I hoover it up. There we are. As you saw briefly in the last clip, I did borrow a band sander. Some of my edges needed quite a bit of sanding down because of my wobbly jigsaw skills. So I suppose I took the quick route out and just borrowed one off a friend, and then made short work of that. As you see, also the band sander has also helped me get a slant on the station platform. Don't forget that the wooden platform is only the base of your actual platform. You can now cover this in sort of plastic card or paint, or even just normal card from someone like Metcalf. I've yet to decide how I'm going to proceed going forward. I was mainly too focused on the platform in general, but believe me, it now fits. The trains can run round. It's not perfect by any means, but it suits me down to the ground. As I say, the bulk of it eventually will be covered in decor, so you won't really see it in this form. But no, it's looking really good, and I'm really impressed with it. I was heavily tempted initially to just go with a straight platform because it'd been so much easier, because you just, I suppose, saw straight bits of wood out. But I'm glad I've gone with a curve, because as I say, looking down the platform, that angle, you can't actually see where the track goes, so that works very well. Breaking the scenery. So no, that's it. It's been very, very fun, this one. I suppose the top tip for you is, well, the only problem with wood is, like I said before, it gets very dusty everywhere, so do be prepared to have to dust off everything. I suppose some sanding can't be done away from the layout, especially when you're trying to get trains to fit around the curves. So you have to do it here. Otherwise you'd be up and down the ladder 20 times, and that'd just be no good for anything. But it's all part of the fun. Anyway, I don't know how long this video has been going on for, but I'm sure it's a long one. So as ever, thank you very much. Hopefully it's been informative. I will do a part 2 video of this to show what I do next. But thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Take care.